Fletus, good to have you, man.
Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're coming in from. I have my favorite beverage as well. Just refilled it as well, ready to go.
Excellent. Another jolt of energy. Fletus, what do you have in store for us, man? Tactical GRC is a pretty big name to say. So what's going on?
Yeah, so we're going to dive into a little bit of everything here. So first caveat, as you see my label at the bottom, I am a blue team leader. This is an odd place for a blue teamer to come sit in here, but I have been around the block, and I will say I moonlight as a GRC evangelist, as well as just a security evangelist in general. For those who've not met me, I'll go ahead and probably pull up my page, give you my intro, and we'll go from there. So sharing out my screen now. Let's confirm that it shows up.
Yeah, let's make sure this is all working. I do see that.
Perfect. So a little bit about myself before we dive in, just logistically wise as well. My screen is off to the side here, so I do not see what's presented. My notes are in front of me. So when you see me looking over, I am not chasing my cat. I am not looking at my interns who I have, who are 11 and 9. So they are my kids. So you'll hear that, which means for those who know me and you know what's coming, I will probably drop at least one, if not more, dad jokes at some point during this presentation, as that is something that I love to do. It is my second time presenting with you guys, so I appreciate the opportunity to come back. Last year, I did a human-centric talk that I thought went well, and today I want to dive into what we can do around GRC. So you're probably thinking, why do I care about GRC as a red team? Why do I care about GRC just as a practitioner? You care about it because what do we do every day? We are protecting and doing risk management. We do offensive tests because of that. We do blue teaming to protect it. We need more than just a checkbox exercise within inside of our GRC teams. We need to get past the documentation exercise and move into what we will call the GRC or GRC engineering. I'm going to refer to it today as tactical engineering, because GRC is no longer that heavyweight annual compliance event. This is where tactical GRC comes into place. We now turn risk into clear engineering priorities. We turn into fast business decisions, and then we measure the resilience of those outcomes. So for my workshop today, I want to connect 3 simple things with you, and that's the threat action to a business impact. Then we want to translate those things into minimal viable control sets. So we'll talk about NIST. I'll probably bring up CIS controls today. And then I'll lead you to the end of how do we create a fast risk acceptance path when we can't fix everything immediately. So we can't talk about GRC without giving you some statistics. So let's start with that. If you need a reason to operationalize your risk faster, look at the data with me. IBM in their 24 report, I tried to find it before, said that global average breach is approaching $5 million. That's up 10 to 12% over the year before, with 70% of our breach organizations reporting significant, if not a moderate, business disruption. So the point here is cyber risk is no longer just a security problem. It's an operational and financial performance issue. If you look at last year's Verizon DBIR report, it reinforces why a tactical approach actually matters. We have to analyze events. So if you look at the report, I believe it was over 22,000 security incidents with approximately 12,000 confirmed breaches, the highest volume it had ever studied in a single report. Look at those numbers again. 22,000 security incidents, approximately 13,000 confirmed breaches. The leading initial access pattern, which we've already talked about, is credential abuse, which came in at 22%. Vulnerability exploitation, being exploited, came in at 20%, and then phishing was up around 16 to 18%. This tells you and I and organizations that we're not having a shortage of framework. We have a shortage of fast prioritization and execution. And that's even more imperative today with the adoption of AI. So let's transition into my workshop. I want to show you how tactical GRC will help you and I move from we know risk exists to we know what to do next, who owns it, and what decision needs to be made. So before we dive into that, let me go over to introducing what I'd like to talk about with you. I'm going to talk about MITRE throughout this because I think it's important from a blue teamer and from a GRC point of view, that we engage appropriately, that we think about how we can take this thing called tactical GRC. So let me explain what that is, since I really haven't yet. I'm meaning a lightweight, threat-informed, decision-ready governance. It's governance that helps you and me deliver faster and more real time. It translates these threats into priorities, controls, into our CI/CD pipelines, our engineering task, and it helps us with unresolved risk that helps allow your CFO to make a quick decision, your CTO, your CIO, your CISO make business decisions. It aligns well with the broader industry, where it's going. Think about the change that happened with NIST CSF recently. In their 2.0, they explicitly emphasize govern as a core function and say that the framework is meant to help organizations first understand, then assess, then prioritize, while being able to communicate the security risk in an effective manner. We have to remember, first off right now, that we have to be bilingual. So Fletus, what do you mean by bilingual? First, we speak business, then we speak tech. Because at the end of the day, if I walk into my CFO, CTO's office, or even my marketing office and start spouting cred harvesting, social engineering, they may or may not understand that. So I want to integrate how we can use this into a broader risk management, because your chief operating officer cares about risk, your CTO cares about risk, and it's not just your CISOs and your CIOs problem anymore. So that leads me into my most favorite dad joke I like to give. For those who've already heard it, I apologize, but for those who haven't, you will appreciate it. What do you do if you get locked out of your house? You talk to the lock, because communication is key. We have to effectively communicate. We have to be able to say that this is the problem, this is the statement, by turning every conversation into a business value phrasing. So let's take it here. I'm going to throw a few phrases at you, write them down. If not, listen to the recording later. The first is tactical GRC creates business value because it reduces ambiguity. It helps you and your team focus on investments, on the risk most likely to disrupt your operations. Calls revenue loss, calls a customer trust or brand issue, or even worse, regulatory standing and those fines. Tactical GRC reduces ambiguity, which is great, because the only thing I want unclear in my life is whether I'm making coffee or I'm just staring at the coffee maker. We have to realize that GRC is no longer that checklist, that spreadsheet, that screenshot. Additionally, tactical GRC is working when it says don't panic. We've prioritized the real risk. When I work, I say don't panic. I've already prioritized my snacks. So I've given you some punny ideas. I've talked a little bit about GRC, and I've given some lighthearted dad jokes and lighthearted statements. And I'll end with one more. Tactical GRC is about focusing investments on your biggest risk. My family calls that budgeting. I, as a blue team member, call it survival with approvals. So let's jump into our first exercise. I'm going to quickly walk through all the exercises today. You're going to need to take these offline. I've uploaded a link that you can download my workbook, but my first exercise as we go is here. So let's first show you. You can get to the workbook by going to a Google Drive. The link should be accessible. If it's not, let me know in chat. I'll fix the permissions. So let's dive into our first one. The first model here is a threat-informed model. This is where we're going to talk about how do we utilize MITRE ATT&CK. Well, Fletus, MITRE is only discussed in the SOC. My offensive team doesn't think about it. Well, they do, because they're trying to exploit it. My GRC team may have never seen MITRE ATT&CK. How do I introduce this to them? Well, you introduce it to them because the same way that they're thinking about qualitative risk assessments is the same way you look at your T-scores. You want to be able to map MITRE ATT&CK techniques, do the score likelihood by getting the impact and detectability, and then you want to select the top priority for your organization. So for this lab, I want you to think about one threat-informed risk modeling that your organization needs today. I'd like you to be able to connect that technical threat pattern to its business impact using MITRE and a simple scoring model. So I'm going to use phishing. It's something I deal with all day long in the SOC. It's something I've dealt with even before I got into IT, which leads to credential harvesting. We know at the end of the day, most attacks are just simply someone logging in. Every red teamer, every offensive person I talk to just wants active crits. We have an entire website out there to help you find out from your data breaches called Have You Been Pwned? You want to know what emails have been leaked and what data breaches. And is that password still valid in any other accounts? So for this exercise, let's talk about phishing leading to a credential theft, because it's easy to understand both the technical and the business audience. We've been teaching for decades what phishing is. And no, it's not the rod you throw in the water, you catch the bass, you go home and grill it over your grill or over your oven. It's the pH, where I'm trying to figure out a way to get you. This was made known first by Kevin Mitnick by using social engineering, which we talked earlier with one of our panelists about how voice works. Phishing doesn't just have to be an email. If I can get a user to send me their password in Teams, in Slack, in Discord, over the phone, we think of phishing just as that email. That's antiquated, and most phishing now is coming through social engineering attacks inside of your unified platforms such as Teams, Slack, Discord, and other mechanisms, or even WhatsApp, because most of us are now in global organizations where that's the means of communicating with your EMEA and APEC employees. So why does this, sorry, I got a question here. Yes, I wanted to make sure that, yes, the workbook is public. I wanted to make sure that that is out there. So let's dive back into where I was going, and I got distracted, but I appreciate the questions. I wanted to make sure that you guys can reach it. And where did my notes just go? They will come back to me momentarily. So I digress, but now I'm back. So why this scenario? You heard me just mention in the Verizon data breach report that credential abuse remains the top initial access vector with 20+%, with phishing still staying a major entry point at 16. And the human element, you and I, going back to, as I said, what I talked about last year, human-centric security, still leads to 60% of our breaches, because you and I are the ones who are working with data all day long, who are interacting with systems, which allows us to let our guard down and inadvertently give away our credentials. So for the scenario here, let's talk about phishing leading to theft. This maps phishing to T-score 15 or 1566. If you followed it, you can go out to the MITRE attack link. It's on my workshop. And then many other business compromise and credit harvesting, which go back to spear phishing links, which is also part of 1566.002. This is where a user is driven to a fake login page or malicious OAuth consent flow. Look at attack.mitre.org. So in tactic 1, phishing and spear phishing link. This represents the initial access mode or method where the user is tricked into clicking a malicious link or interacting with a fraudulent sign-in page. Tactic 2 would be a valid account, which is your T-score of 1078. Once creds are stolen, the attacker now often logs in. Yes, you heard me, logs in with legitimate account, which makes the activity harder to distinguish from normal user behavior. Does Fletus normally log in at 3 a.m. from Ireland? Has he ever been to Austria? Is he supposed to be in San Diego? This is where your detections come into play. But this also allows you as the GRC and the SOC person, or even the security architecture team, to think about how you would detect this. Next is multi-factor authentication request generation. This is mapping to 1621. If MFA is enabled, the adversary may generate repeated push notifications. This is known as MFA fatigue. And this pressures the user into approving the request. For those who've heard me talk, I think I mentioned it last year's talk, I have personally fell for this. Not me personally, but my intern. It's the 4th of July, which is coming up here in the United States in just a couple weeks. I'm out at the grill. I'm cooking my hot dogs. Next thing I know, my smartwatch, I see a push notification come in. What you don't know is I just handed my phone to my son, who's FaceTiming with his grandmother, who's asking what she should bring over for the cookout. Him trying to swipe away the notification accidentally accepts it. That happens because of a shared device. Was I secure? Yes. Did I give up my device? Yes. Did my son activate the notification? Yes. Luckily for me, I handed off my grill tongs to my neighbor. I went upstairs to my office. I revoked my sessions. I was able to stop that. But this could happen to any of your employees. And an MFA fatigue is something that's going to happen unless you change your notifications to a challenge response. Enter a 2-digit code. Use phishing resistance with a FIDO key. I digress. Tactic 4, optional follow-up technique. This is where email hiding rules happen. This is in 1564.008. After they compromise the mailbox, the attacker may create inbox rules to hide their alerts, to move security notifications, or simply to delete warning messages that their account has been compromised. So you can see on the screen, I've walked through likelihood, impact, and detectability. So now let's map that out real quickly. If you go with my example, the spear phishing link will have a likelihood of likely a 5, your impact of 4, and maybe detect, let's just land on 3. So that gets you a score of 12. Where a valid account being found today, let's go with a likelihood of 5. The impact, if I have your creds, I'm going to go very far, 5 again. And then you get the detectability as a 4. Now we're at a 14. Again, these numbers show the criticality of 555. The max number you can get is a 15. I've got a 12 and 14 just on the first 2 T-scores, mapping back to spear phishing links and valid creds. Now with the MFA request generation. Well, I mapped this at a 443, so 11, but you may say we don't do push notifications, so you may be able to bring the likelihood down because you already have that challenge response. You've moved away from that process and are using FIDO keys. And then finally, this is the easiest one to get rid of, but again, is the email hiding of your rules. What's the likelihood they're going to do it? It's probably a 3, right in the middle. The impact is you're now blind to it. And the detectability is pretty easy. I can create a rule, and I do have a rule. A user turns on a forwarding rule, I get a notification. So what does this mean for you as the offensive person or the blue team member? The value of doing this is not just a mathematical perfection. The value here is to help you focus your security, your engineering, and your business stakeholders to agree on what matters right now. June 12th, 2026. If a credential theft scores high, we've done something important. We've narrowed a broad cybersecurity problem into one concrete, risky priority. That alone is a business benefit because it improves your focus and prevents your teams from spreading efforts too thin. So I'll leave you with this one for Lab 1. What you're really doing here is converting threat intelligence into business prioritization. Okay, I'll get your permissions fixed for that. So moving into the viable control exercise. Now we want to map this back to your control sets. We want to think about what this looks like. So for this part of the exercise, we're going to start with your top priority techniques. Define 3 to 5 controls, translate each of them into an engineering task, and then assign an owner by role and not by department. So for this, GRC becomes operational, not just a compliance checkbox. Instead of producing a long standard document, we defined small numbers of controls that actually reduce the specific risk we just prioritized. So let's continue with the phishing cred theft scenario. Phishing resistance MFA for your high users. Give that to your domain admins. Give that to your executive assistants. Give it to your finance team, your talent acquisition team, and all of your IT users. Set up conditional access for unmanaged devices. Do you allow a BYOD? Can I bring in my MacBook into your environment, my own personal phone, my tablet, and connect it to your network? Have detection analytics for impossible travel and suspicious logins. So even if you get my creds, as I alluded earlier, does Fletus ever log in from Ireland? Does he ever log in from San Diego? Or is he sitting on a cruise ship coming through a Miami IP, but he's out in the middle of the Baltic Sea on a cruise ship with Carnival? Too soon to talk about Carnival. And the last part here is, can you have a fast reset and session revocation workflow? You heard me talk about I was able to revoke my sessions because I was an admin. I walked upstairs. I logged into my laptop. But if a user calls your help desk, do they understand the process or have the rights to update their sessions? And then admin account segmentation and tighten privilege access. It's 2026. Please remove local admin from your end users. If they have it, segment those users. Protect them when they're using local admin. Give them a privileged account and force them to come through a jump box or a bastion. Put tiering in your environment with 0 being your domain controllers, 1 being your privileged servers, and 2 being your member servers. Think about these, and let's turn these controls I just listed now into engineering tasks. So to implement phishing resistance, that will be owned by your IAM team. They can do this through, if you're an Okta shop, with an Okta workflow, with Entra through your conditional access policies or a logic app. You have the ability to do this with your identity detection, or your identity provider, your IDP. Your IAM team will own this one. Blocking access to unmanaged devices that can connect to sensitive SaaS apps, that's your endpoint and your identity engineering teams. They can put this into their workflows to check the MAC address, to check to see if it's got the PKI cert for your organization on it, and to make sure that it's actually meant to have access. Potentially putting credential access on it through MFA and the FIDO key to protect where you're accessing. And then going back to my bread and butter, enable detections for suspicious logins and token misuse. This is your SOC and your detection engineering teams. That's why Tactical GRC is spread back into your sister teams, because it allows GRC to start producing deliverable value. They're helping you map those controls, and they stop being abstract policy statements. They start becoming backlog-ready work. Engineering teams hate when I talk about backlogs because they always grow. But if I can get a prioritization, I can move it from the bottom of a backlog to the top, if not to the front of their active sprint. So here's some justification on prioritization. IBM found that security AI and automation and prevention workflows reduced your breach costs on average of $2 million. Organizations using AI and automations also reduced identity and contain time by nearly 100 days on average. So when we talk about tactical controls, we're not just talking about paper compliance anymore. We're talking about materially reducing business loss and response friction. So for this lab, your output that you want here is not theoretical control coverage. The output is a short, defensible, owned control set that you can hand to your CI/CD engineer, your site reliability engineer, your detection engineer, to execute during their next scheduled sprint. So let's move into the rapid acceptance workflow. For this lab, I want you to think through a control that you cannot implement immediately. Write a concise risk memo and define the approval workflow, such as requester, security lead, business owner, and then final approval. Likely going to be a VP or higher when you're thinking this through. This is important, and one of the most important parts of tactical GRC is, what do we do when we know the right control, but we can't implement it immediately? There are many organizations still stall on delivery and accept risk informally without accountability. Raise your hand, yes, virtually, when you've brought a risk to your CISO, he takes it north and no one in the room will sign it. you still know that risk is on your books. You've put the risk acceptance in. It's inside of your GRC tool. Your SOC manager is aware of it. You put additional detection and response capabilities on it, but you haven't closed the door. This is where taking these memos is very helpful. So when you know that there's an unmanaged device access problem in your organization, but the business continues to not enforce device compliance for that critical contractor, here's what you need to do. Instead of pretending the risk doesn't exist, we need to document in 5 simple sentences. Here's the sentences you need to create. What the risk is, why it exists, what could happen, what compensating controls actually exist, and what decision is needed. This starts to frame this as a business value for your organization, because GRC now protects speed and accountability. It gives your business a way to make conscious trade-off decisions without waiting for the perfect security state. This matters even more now because third-party and ecosystem dependency risk is growing. In the DFIR report from Verizon, third-party involvement in breaches doubled to 30% in 2025. The World Economic Forum found that 54% of large organizations see supply chain interdependencies as the greatest barrier to cyber resilience. So in other words, unresolved risk is increasingly a shared risk across your vendors, your partners, your SaaS providers, and the delivery ecosystems inside of your organization. So for this one, I want to leave you with this one. Risk acceptance should never be a loophole. It should be a fast, explicit, business-owned decision. Flying through these, but we'll keep going. Be good for questions. So the 90-second risk storytelling. I'll stop here for a quick story after I have a sip of my coffee. The most effective security leaders that I know are great storytellers. They understand what it's like to walk into a boardroom and be given 15 minutes or less. They're not going to bring in 30 slides. They're likely not going to bring in 5 slides. They're going to bring in 1, maybe 2, and it may build on it. Again, going back to my previous comment, the storytelling is them using real-world application stories to sell the business justification of the new DLP, the new CSPM, the new whatever tool you're looking for, AI governance, because they, at the end of the day, know that plain language to a VP is what's going to get them the funding they need. Because you want to have an elevator pitch. Another quick story for you here. When you get in the elevator and you press, let's just say you work on the 30th floor of a 60-floor building. Next thing you know, you see someone walk in and they press 59 or 60. I'm going to make it safe to assume that your executives are on the top floor. You turn to you and see a lady standing beside you who immediately asks you who you are and what you do. That's your CFO. She doesn't want to know that you're a pen tester and that you write exploits and malware all day long. She wants to know, as a red team member of your organization, what value you're bringing to the organization. So instead of saying, I'm able to pop a shell with interpreter and get domain access in 15 minutes, probably 2, you want to tell her, I'm able to determine how long it takes to get into your golden image. Probably even not the right term. How quickly I can get into a hardened system that your IT team has spent X amount of dollars on. Or how acceptable are you as an executive to a deep fake or social engineering attack? These terms they're starting to hear. So make sure that you start that communication. That's why NIST CFF2, CSF2 made it very clear that cyber programs should organize communication risk, not just assess it. Going back to my dad joke about communication is key. We have to exercise this muscle. Communication is a muscle. So let's dive into a sample talk track. I'm going to read out one that I drafted out. We have a high likelihood credential theft risk driven by phishing and unmanaged device access. If exploited, an attacker could gain access to sensitive business systems with your credentials, a legitimate account, which makes detection harder for our security operations center and increases a disruption risk to our organization, which may cause business impact and brand awareness. The IT and security organizations have some compensating controls in place, including sign-in monitoring, security awareness training, but we've yet to have full enforcement of phishing resistance authentication and managed device access. The immediate decision is whether we accept this risk temporarily while funding is a phased control, we deploy the rollout, or we prioritize this risk implementation now for high-risk users. The goal is never to sound technical. The goal is to sound actionable. So that statement alone wasn't 90 seconds. I could have added more stories. I could have added more opportunities for you to learn. But your goal here is to tell a story. You're always in the form of storytelling. Think about what is beneficial if you have kids, nieces, nephews. They like a good story. That's why the farmer says, or the hunter says, I got a buck with this many racks, or the fisher says the fish was this big when it was actually this big. Or your kid comes into your room late at night and says, there's a monster under my bed. He's got glowing green eyes. They know that a story will get your attention. So make sure that when you're telling a story, that it's actionable and not just technical. So I'm going to wrap up here with a few things for you, and then we'll go to Q&A. My workshop was supposed to be intentionally simple. You're probably wondering, what's my action here? I want you to help be able to move from a threat scenario to a prioritized risk. I want you to shift from a prioritized risk to an executable control set, and then form that unresolved control gap into a documented business process. So again, here are 5 concrete ways that tactical GRC will drive business value. The first one, you've heard me talk about already. It improves prioritization. By your teams focusing on threats most likely to cause business disruption, they're going after what Verizon shared. The most common entry point are stolen credentials, vulnerabilities, and then phishing. So your threat-informed prioritization is no longer optional. It's your fundamental decision. Second, you're here to reduce operational drag. You're turning your controls into owned engineering tasks rather than abstract requirements. Thirdly, it will support a faster, high-quality decision-making process because you've now added lightweight risk acceptance workflows that align with how the business operates. You can implement something at quarter end by following an engineering task, at year end to help them close the books quicker and safely and more securely. Fourthly, you can materially reduce your loss exposure. As I mentioned inside of the IBM report, with using AI and automation, aka GRC engineering, you're able to reduce your breach costs by approximately $2 million from that study, thus shortening your response timeline significantly. And finally, the fifth one, you're building a more resilient ecosystem, which matters because third-party involvement in your breaches is continuing to rise, as well as the supply chain interdependencies that are out now at the top of all executives, including myself, to build a resilient environment. So if strategic GRC tells us what good governance should look like, tactical GRC helps us make governance usable by your engineers, by your security team, by the business leaders making real-time decision trade-offs. So my sentence I'd like you to own and take with you here is tactical GRC is the discipline of turning cyber risk into immediate, own, and business-aligned actions. I'll pause now for questions, comments, and I'll make sure I get the workbook opened up for permissions. Okay. Anthony, there you go, John. It's like someone come in. If not, I'll
like help. That's all right. I got you. I'm here with you. Well, I did see some really cool questions come through. If you're willing to dance with them,
I am willing to dance.
GRC said, "Hey, are there any good tips for separating just checkboxes into real risk mitigation, even if you need to charge onwards without a signature from leadership? Is there an option there?"
So the best way of going about that is, you heard me talk about, you want to align to their current business process. So anytime you can say to my story point taking, this is how I am enabling you, because again, I didn't use it in this talk, but a good friend of mine always says, know your no. KNOW, know why you say no. No is, oh, hey, here's one of my interns. She's saying hello. We have an intern saying hello. But you want to make sure that you align that talk and that point to say, I know I have pre-approval to do this, but I'm waiting on formal approval. So you start marching forward knowing that you have built that culture, that your CISO is going to go to bat for you. Your CIO is going to go to bat for you. Your chief privacy officer is going to be willing to accept that risk.
Excellent. Well, hey, we'll give some more time in case anyone else has any other questions coming through. Would love to see those funnel in the chat. But if I may, Fletus, I would love to ask, and maybe this is, I don't know, hopefully there's some runway for you, but I know there are so many things to tackle for cybersecurity. Hey, folks are trying to build out their own program, their security stack, their security posture. GRC, of course, hey, component of all of that, but is there something that you see too many teams just aren't taking seriously and really need to better prioritize? Or is that too broad, you think?
It's not too broad. I think it goes back to our age-old thing, it depends. So when I say it depends, what keeps your lights on? So let's go back to the CI triad. Is it confidentiality? Is it integrity or availability? We all know that the triad is not evenly based. Depending on if you're healthcare, you want to keep your intellectual property confidential. If you're Amazon, you want your availability to be up, and they make sure it's up because they lose money for every millisecond that it's down. Seconds is millions of seconds is tens of thousands. So from a GRC point of view, I want to move left with GRC, just like our AppSec program have done for years. I want to put policy as code. I want to make sure before that S3 bucket comes up that I have minimum security baseline policies. I've turned on CloudTrail. I've turned on CloudWatch. I have GuardDuty watching this before it ever hits production. And I also want an infrastructure as code so that I can turn around and redeploy it when I miss a step. Back to that govern piece of CSF. That's where it comes into play. The engineers love me when I tell them, hey, I just need you to add this code checkbox right here. It's a checkbox for them, like literally a code checkbox on their development plans, on the AppSec. When I do SAST, DAST, they're like, oh, Fletus told me all I have to do is add this and I'm going to pass. Auditors hate me when I give them a PR to review or a JSON file instead of a screenshot. Auditors no longer like me when I make them review JSON versus make them look at a spreadsheet or a screenshot. They're like, what are you making me look at? I'm like, this is the JSON, this is the YAML file, and here's the pull request where it was approved. That's my change control. Next question.
Well, another that came through, and maybe this is spicy, but hey, how do I stop engineers or technicians or folks that are really upset when you do need to do some like principle of least privilege work and take away the beloved local admin privileges?
So another talk for a different day, but I put it on my channel. That's the person that I make my security champion, because if he or her is willing enough to be vocal, they're also willing enough to help me engineer a solution. And if I'm a Microsoft shop, that might be using endpoint privilege management. If I am a containerization shop, maybe I give them a Docker or Kubernetes to do their work in. So they don't have to do it locally. So they're not a local admin on their Mac or their Windows 11, but they are full admins on that Docker container, on that Kubernetes instance. And you build into their process. What is their skill sets? Are they comfortable spinning up a Docker? Are they comfortable using EPM? So endpoint privilege management on their Windows laptop. So you work with them, and I turn that squeaky wheel into my best security advocate. Like that AppSec program, the person who's complaining about my policies is the best person to sit down and job shadow and say, how do I make your job better? How do I make your job easier while making our company more secure?
Yeah, love that. Enabling the team to get involved with you. That's a really good approach. Cool. Sorry about that as well, too. I had a little technical bump. I couldn't actually hop back in the stream with you, Fletus, over there. So thank you, John, for hopping in and
Hey, we're
saving
doing this
I was
together.
like, Anthony,
That's all
don't
right.
no love from Anthony anymore.
I know,
I was like,
let's
no
try.
love. So,
No, GRC fan at heart, as you know. Fletus, in terms of GRC, though, man, because in this new brave new world that we're entering with AI, what do you think, or maybe what are you seeing are some of like the more immediate challenges with
yeah, so the
AI
best thing
enablement?
I will
Yeah.
tell people right now, and this is not just pure GRC, this is the governance and risk and compliance. And you can come say hello. You can wait. So
Welcome.
she's wanting access to the phone.
Intern.
Least privileged. My fingerprint opens it, not hers. But back to the AI thing. Sit down with your R&D team. I'm actively doing this right now. What are you building? Why are you building it? How are you building it? Because if I know how you're building it, I can shift security to the AI piece. And I can say, this is our minimal viable control. I need you to make sure you have patch management, you have hardening. This is the cadence you're going to do this. And then hot buzz topic right now that's hard is I want a model bill of materials. You're already writing a software bill of materials. Write me a model bill of materials. Tell me what your vector database is. Tell me what your tokenizers are. Tell me what your context window is. Tell me what language model you're planning to use and how do you plan to audit it so that you don't get updated and it breaking your entire workflow. Back to the GRC piece, because you and I don't want to be putting in the same document Monday through Friday, and then the following Monday, it no longer gives me the same data because the model changed behind the scenes. All of us have worked with a SaaS solution where on Friday, the chat button wasn't there. On Monday, the chat button was there. And all of a sudden, your users are clicking it and uploading data. And IT didn't turn it on. The SaaS provider turned it on.
It's a challenge, man. Acceptable token policy. I don't know. Is that like a new thing that's going to be coming with GRC?
I think you've got AI gateways. Your GRC programs are going to say you can steer traffic to, let's just pick Fable for this. It needs to go to Sonnet for this. Nothing goes to Sonnet or nothing goes to Fable unless it's net new, high impact. Everything else is going to Sonnet or Opus now. And you put your sub agents going here, and your GRC policy outlines that, and your policy is code.
Interesting.
Again, it's a hot topic, something fun to think about, something I'm trying to figure out how to actually do at my day job with some of the consultancy I've done. These are just good panels.
Policy as code. That's good. I like that. We have infrastructure as code. We have so much as code, but policy as code is going.
And that's why, like, I put I called it the M-bomb. It's the AI bill of materials. But you need an AI bill of materials. You should know in your organization what is the bill of materials for this AI I'm using. And if you don't, you should be asking your vendor to declare it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, for the legal folks, if there's any here, check those MAs, check those EAs, check those contracts, because they may slide a contract in that says you cannot use AI on my data. And now I'm in a violation if I start putting customer data, even if it's just transactional data, into an AI model. The GRC, your compliance team, needs to be aware of those modifications at renewal that may or may not say you can use OLAMA locally, or you use Opus in your IDE. You may not be able to do that anymore if your legal team and your compliance team are not looking for those new verbiage inside of your contracts.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Very, very cool. And sorry, I don't mean to take up more of the question space. I can always talk more with the GRC space, as you know, Fletus. But
it's a fun topic that people don't think about. Like, GRC can be technical. It's not just an auditor anymore.
Yes.
And we've let the industry believe that GRC is only for auditors. I told you, I am a blue teamer through and through. I do cyber defense all day long. But you can hear me. I'm passionate about this topic too, because it's going to enable my AppSec program. It's going to enable secure development with SDLC. It's going to enable my IT operations teams to harden and deploy stuff quicker and faster, where yesterday I had to care about that. Today I don't. It's automated. It's automated. It's taken care of by GRC, tactical GRC and GRC engineering, which is the new term. That I love what AJ Yan has done with this, to give a shameless plug to AJ. And I'm waiting to see what everyone else picks up.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it, man.
Well, I see the intern starting to overthrow the operation, a little bit of mutiny. I don't know. I hear the cats chiming in.
I mean,
so
I'm here today for two reasons. I'm a blue teamer at heart. I'm here for GRC. But at the end of the day, my offensive guys are my friends. We all work for the same company. At the end of the day, I want your job to be as easy and effective as possible. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because you want challenges as a red teamer, as an offensive guy. You want the puzzle piece to be difficult. But if I can clear that first hurdle, then you have high value targets to go after versus, well, I got DA. What do I do now?
Definitely.
Well, thank you, Fletus, for all your insight and expertise. I'm very glad and thank you for shining the spotlight on hey GRC and blue team efforts, because that always needs more love than it tends to get. So,
and that's why I think we're going to see new terms. We've got purple teams now. I'm waiting to see how AI and GRC engineering become a new role that's not just GRC engineering, not just blue team. I'm not saying I'm going to tap one. I don't know what it'll be. But with AI, with blue team, with GRC, with offensive, there's going to be a new role for someone who's doing this. And I think GRC engineering is what's taking off. But I feel like that's even still short-sighted.
Yeah, the AI oversight. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, Fletus, thank you for mine as well, too. Awesome.
And I will get the permissions fixed for the lab, and if not, I will email it to someone. But I'll get that.
Thank you. Yeah, we saw chat very excited to dive in, so looking forward to that whenever you can flip the switch. But that is also, I believe, in a lot of the workshops. But the Google Drive link you had, yeah, would love to open that up. Thank you.
And if not, I'll embed it back into here, and y'all can republish it. But I'm trying to keep it on a link so you're not having to host files, even though you can. So
you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for round 2, man.
Yes, great to see you again for the second year.
Yeah. Thank you, Fletus. All righty. Have a good one, man.